What's up guys, and welcome back to the Bonsai-En YouTube channel. I'm Josh, and today we're going to be doing our second round of work on this juniper with branch and bud selection, so stick around. Alright, so I'm hoping to make this one a quick video today, but what we're going to do is we're going to work on this juniper here. Now, some of you might remember this juniper from the remedial work video that we did with working with raw nursery stock. I'll put a link down in the description for that if you missed that video. But basically, when we acquired this juniper, it had about 10 or 11 tails on it, and it was really overgrown and long. So our first little bit of work that we did to that is we took that back. We did create some gins and things up in here, and we just cleaned it up. So this is the tree as it is at the moment. Now, some of you are probably already thinking, but at the end of that video, you created a cascade tree. Now, that is true, but the longer I looked at this tree, I noticed that it would make a much better semi-cascade tree, just because of the structure it had here. So I actually come through and I cut that tail off just here. So that's where the main tail was going, but I cut it off here, and this is where we're gonna have the tree. So the point of today's video is, I showed you the first part of reducing the tree back to the main structure. Now that the tree is recovered from that, we're starting to see some growth. We're moving into spring now. What I don't want to happen is for all the little buds and stuff that are in there to all shoot, because we want to put the energy into the places we want to grow, and we want to reserve that energy. So up in the top of the tree up in here, we've got a bunch of little buds that have come out. We don't want them to grow and take off if we're not going to utilize them. It's just going to waste energy, and it's going to cause more work later on down the line when we've got to come back in and prune those little branches off when they grow. So we're going to select some buds. Okay, there may be some buds that we will keep because they might be in places where it'd be ideal for a branch later on. And then the other thing we're going to do is come in and have a look at some of the branches that are already on the tree, keep the ones that we need, and we're going to get rid of the ones that we don't, just like we would with the buds, but we're talking about some branches that are a little bit more established here. So this is going to set the tree up for its next little bit of structure. Once we finish this, the tree is still not going to look anything like a bonsai. We're still developing the tree. We're still getting that rough structure together. But this is a very important thing to learn, because if you do this work properly in the right steps, you're going to end up with a much nicer tree later on down the track. So let's bring you in a little bit closer and have a look at some of the buds first, see what we're going to keep and what we're going to get rid of, and then we'll move on to the branches afterwards. Alright, so the first kind of bud that we're going to take a look at is this situation that we've got going on here. So as you can see, all these little buds have shot here. This is indicative of a really healthy tree. But we've got all these new buds here, and we're not likely going to need any of these for this design. So what we don't want to happen is these buds here to grow out into branches like this, because we're not going to use them and it's just going to waste energy. So we want the tree to concentrate on the stuff that we're going to leave, especially now. So like I mentioned before, we're just about to come into spring. So we're going to get that burst of growth, that burst of energy. So we want to make sure that we're focusing that energy on the places that we need it, and we can get the tree to a more refined bonsai quicker. So by getting rid of all of this stuff, then we're not wasting energy on that. So we just need to come through and basically just nip it straight off the tree like so. And this is where a good proper set of bonsai scissors comes in handy. So, you know, you've got those small fine blades, and you can actually get up underneath those buds and nip them off. Now this is a little bit easier when you're not standing in an awkward position trying to prune the tree for the camera's sake. So I'm trying to stand in a way that's not blocking your view. But you can see how we're just going through and nipping off all those little buds and cleaning this up. Now, this is something that you'll have to do over your whole entire tree. Look for places where there's buds where you might not want them. So, for example, there's one right there in here, so that's something that we're not going to need, so we can get in there and prune that guy off, get rid of that. But if we go through our whole entire tree here and just have a look, you know, we've got stuff up the back just up here. A lot of this stuff we're not going to need, so we can come in and start pruning this stuff off and get rid of that. So that's the first thing that you're going to want to look for when you're doing this work, is just buds that are in positions where you don't want branches to grow. Go through and clean all those out, and then you can come back and have a look at your branch selection. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to clean out the rest of those buds now, and then we'll come back and have a look at the actual branches that are on the tree. Okay, so I've gone through and cleaned up some of the buds in the main areas of the tree. I have left some on the branches, and I'll explain why in a minute. But the next thing we need to do is come through and look at the main structural branches and start taking them back to the length that we need them. So we've got a couple on here. So this one here, okay? So I know the bottom of it's out of frame at the moment, but we don't want it to be any lower than this one. And you can see that it is lower than that one now. So this is going to be one of our main pads, and then we've got the rest of the tail down here. But we really want it to be kind of up in here somewhere. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring this one up, and then we're going to look for a spot around here. And first of all, I'm going to come through, and I'm just going to flat cut it. So we're going to get rid of that piece. So now that I've done my flat cut, I'm going to come through and trim some of this off here. Now, we don't want this big ugly wound looking at us, so what I'm going to come through is with my angled branch cutters, I'm going to come through and cut it on an angle, and like magic we get rid of that. We hide that cut so it's not looking at us anymore. So now that we've trimmed that back, we've created some space in here for our design. So the next one we've got is we've got this really thick branch in behind here. So if I try and open that up for you a little bit, you can't really see it that well, but there is a fairly big, thick structural branch in there. Now, this is really part of the, almost part of the apex, so we really don't want it this long. So we're going to have to come in and cut that up probably really dramatically. We're probably going to come right up into here. So I'm going to get my bigger set of branch cutters out, and same thing again, I'm going to come in and I'm going to do a flat cut. Alright, so we've got our branch off now, so we'll get rid of that. And now we've got this to deal with, so we're going to come in and same thing again with our larger branch cutters. I'm going to come in and cut it on an angle. And now it's much less noticeable. And now you can see that we're starting to actually shape the apex of the tree a little bit. We're starting to get that semi-cascade look. Now the next branch we've got is this one back here as well. So we don't want this coming all the way down here. We want this somewhat part of the apex as well. So we're going to cut this one right back. So once again, going to go back to my smaller branch cutters. We're going to find a spot up in here, so probably right after this movement ends just here. Going to come in and flat cut to begin with. And then once we've done our flat cut, we can come in, clean this up a little bit. And then this is our branch on the end here, so we want to do our angle cut underneath that. So you can see that's the angle there. So if we were to flat cut, that would be the angle. But we've got this little guy here, and basically we want to come in with our branch cutters on an angle, like that, and make that cut on the angle, just like that. So that's a lot of our main structural branches cut back. I do have this left on here to maybe create a gin later on. I haven't made a decision on that yet. But now that we've made those structural moves, we can come in a little bit closer and actually start having a look at these individual branches and keeping some so that they grow and getting rid of others. So I'll bring the camera in a little bit closer so we can see that in a little bit more detail and have a look at it. Alright, so I've got you in nice and close now. This is the very bottom of the tree. So this will be the last pad down the bottom of our semi-cascade tree. So what we need to do now is come through on our little branches and select which ones of these little branchlets we're going to keep and which ones we're going to get rid of. Because we don't want ones like this, for example. We don't need this guy, so we don't want that actually growing anymore. And as you can see, we've still got buds all through here. So sometimes we're actually better off keeping a bud rather than the branch that's already there, just depending on what the branch is like. So up in here, we can already see we've got some buds in the crutch, so we're going to get rid of these out of here because we definitely don't want that crutch growing any buds. But as you move down here, you can see we've got nothing, but we've got this little bud up under here. Now this little bud up under here is going to give us a branch right on the outside of this bend here. Now, it's not in the ideal location because it's coming from the bottom of the branch, but we can fix that with wire after it grows. But it is in the ideal spot in terms of as we come out onto this branch here, this is our first bend. And we really want a branch that's going to come out into here and fill this gap inside this bend just here. So we're going to allow this bud to grow down into here and cause a branch here. Now we don't want to do it with this one because this here and this bud, if I just get rid of them, you can see they'd be on the inside of this curve, and that's not where we want it. We'd rather have a branch come from the outside of this curve, come in and create a little bit of pad here. So we're going to actually keep that bud there. Now as we move down, you can see this next one here, it's actually on the inside of this curve. So we're going to come in and we're going to get rid of the bud that's at the base and the branch there. Now, as we move down again, we've got this guy here. So we've got our bend here and we're going to want a branch on the outside of this curve. Now, we've got a few options here. This one here is definitely not going to be our guy because it's a little bit too far away from the bend. So we're going to get rid of that. And we're going to get rid of that bud there. But these ones here, these are all good contenders. So we've got 1, 2, 3. There's another one back there that you probably can't see. That one just there. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4 possible contenders here for the branch that's going to be on the outside of this curve. Let me just try and move all this out of the way. So these are our guys here. So we've got the option of this, we've got the option of this one here, option of this, or the option of the one that's coming out underneath here. Now out of all of these, I would say this is going to be our best option just because it sits right on the curve here. So I'm going to come through and I'm going to get rid of that, I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm going to get rid of that. And then we're just going to keep this. Now I am also going to keep this bud just here because as this bud grows, it might actually be a better branch than this one. So I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to pull this bud off the top here. And we had another branch back here that was hiding, so I'm just going to snip that off. So now you can see we've already dramatically reduced what we've got. So we've got our bud here, which is going to be our branch that's going to come in and fill this gap here. And then we've got our little branchlet here, which is going to be wired down to be something like that. Now, as we come around again, we've got another curve just here. Now, this branch here is perfect. It's right on the outside of this, but there's one on the inside. So we need to get rid of that inside one because we're not going to want that. But something that I'm going to do is I'm going to keep both this and this bud that's here, that's behind it. Because what they can do is actually form some body. So as we start to fan these out, we end up with our, our branches all fanned out like that, but we need some body to come in over the top to create that pad. So if this is all our branches and we've got foliage out on the ends of these branches, and then we've got all this structure in here, you need another set of branches to kind of come in and sit over the top of those ones to create what we call body. So you've got your main part of your pad and then you've got your body over the top. This will be able to come and sit over the top and create that body. Now, as we move down the branch a bit more, we've got a bit of a straight section here, but because we've got a branch that's going to be here, we can get rid of this. And I'm going to say we can get rid of this because if this is going to come in and be the body, then this one's just going to be in the way. So I'm going to snip that off. We've got this, which we're not going to need. Got that, which we're not going to need. A couple of buds here. A couple of buds there. Now, I'm just thinking because we've got a fair bit of space there. No, we should be right. So what I was thinking about there is we've got this branch on the outside of this curve, which will be good. And then we've got this one that's just a little bit further down on the straight. But if I get rid of this, then I'm left with this big gap in here. But if you look, once we bring this down, that's going to come into there anyway. So I am going to get rid of this off of there like that. Then we're going to cut this off the top. Now, we've got our next bend just here. So, we can either keep this. Let me bring that further up in the frame for you. We can either keep this or we can keep the bud that's up underneath it. So, you can see there's a little bud up underneath. What I'm going to do for now is, once again, I'm going to keep both. That gives me two options. So once we start growing in spring, I can start to see which one of these two is going to be the better option. And then this is going to be the end of our tail here. So even as we come through to this little section here, let me just move that back so you can see it, sorry. So as we come into this section here, we've still got to make some choices because now we start running into the issue of how these junipers grow, where we've got two branches across from each other, and then two across from each other, and then two across from each other. So we need to come through here and we say, okay, well, we've got a branch on this side, so it's going to make sense to remove the branch on this side, okay, to create space for this one and keep this one. And then as we move down, we can start to do that pattern. So we're going to remove this one as well. So we keep that one. Then we remove this little one here. Move that one on top. Keep that one for body. Then we've got that one on the side. Remove that one. So as you can see now, we've reduced that. We've got a little branch here. We've got a little branch here, and we've got our body branch, and then we've got our tip. So you can see how much we've actually just reduced that branch, but you can see the future, okay? And that's what we want to do in bonsai. We don't want to get caught up in, oh, I don't want to remove all this material, because now for the next couple of weeks, even the next month or two, I'm going to have a tree that's going to look like crap, which I admit, this looks like crap. But in the future, once this branch grows and then comes down into this spot and fills that, once this grows more and we wire that out and goes into there, we wire that out, we bring that body branch down into there, we're going to have a nice full pad just here, and it's going to be perfectly structured. So that's the kind of work that you're going to want to do over the whole entire tree. You're going to want to reduce things, and once again, I can't iterate it enough, coming into spring, we only want, you can see how much growth that we took off there. all that other growth that we didn't need, if we had left that on there, it would have grown and then we would have cut it off anyway. So there's no point. So now what's going to happen is the only things that are going to grow on this branch is the things that we want to keep, and those things are going to grow stronger because they're going to get all the energy rather than sharing it with all that other stuff that we didn't need. So now that I've shown you that, I'm not going to show you that on every single branch on the tree, but I'm going to go through and I'm going to do that to all the other branches on the tree. Then we'll come back and have a final chat. All right, so as you can see, we've got some pretty dramatic reduction of this tree now. All we're left with is everything that we want to grow on the tree for the structure of the tree this spring season. No wasted energy on anything else. Now, there are some areas on the tree, like we showed down here with this branch, because this has been wide, we know where our outside of our curves are going to be, which is where we want our branches to be. But we do have some branches like up in the apex up here, and we've got some branches along here that haven't been wide yet. So one of the next things that we're going to have to do is let this tree flush out during the spring season, let those branches get a little bit stronger. Then in summer, we'll come back through and we'll reduce again all the stuff that we don't need, and then we'll wire up those branches. Once we wire up those branches, then we can come through and do the same thing that we did here, where we know where our outside of our curves are now on those branches. We can reduce to the branches that are on those outsides of those curves, and we can do that same thing for the rest of the tree. So that would be the next step for this one. So let it grow during spring, come back in, reduce again in summer, do a bit of that wiring, reselect some of those branches and buds for the rest of the branches that didn't get done now, and then let it flush again. Then after that, some of these branches we're going to have to let grow until they thicken up and then reduce again. So I'm going to try and keep filming the work of this tree for you guys so you can see everything that we do on it, and hopefully you'll be able to take that information, follow it, and do that kind of stuff for yourself. So I hope the main takeaway from today's video is we have to reduce before we build a tree. Don't get so attached to all the foliage that's on the tree just for the sake of the tree being bigger or more full or looking more impressive or just like there's more tree there. We have to reduce before we can build, because we only want to build with the stuff that's going to be beneficial for us and not just have a whole bunch of other stuff on there wasting energy and wasting our time with having to prune stuff that we don't need and all that other stuff. But that's going to be it for today's video. If you'd like to learn more from us, I will leave links down in the description below to our online courses over at thebonsaidojo.com. We also do have an online store with high quality Japanese tools and accessories, so definitely go and check that out. The link will be down in the description below as well. But until next time, enjoy your bonsai journey.